2,000 feet underground, one 20-minute break, and a small metal tin with everything he had to survive the shift. This is what was inside it. These are 20 things British miners ate to keep themselves going underground. And before we get through the list, 3 of them are going to stop you completely. Number 17 was eaten in total darkness, by hand, crouched in a space 18 inches high, and cost his wife 4 pence to make. Number 9 matched the daily calorie intake of an Olympic athlete. And number 1, sitting at the bottom of every snap tin in every pit village across Britain, is something you almost certainly remember from your own childhood. And once you understand what it meant to these men, you will never see it the same way again. Let's start at number 20, and let's start where every miner's day started, with the tin of dripping sitting by the range. All week long, every roast, every rasher, every bit of meat the family could afford, the fat that came off it went into that tin. By 4 in the morning, when she was up before him spreading it thick on 2 doorstep slices of white bread, that dripping had the flavour of everything cooked that week built into it. Monday's mutton, Wednesday's bacon. It was the whole week on a slice of bread going into the darkness with him. Dripping bread in 1965 cost roughly a penny a slice to make. The fat was already in the house. The bread was a penny halfpenny a loaf. It was the cheapest thing on this entire list. And it was also the most important, because it was dense with calories. It held together in the snap tin without going to pieces. And it tasted, when you were 2,000 feet underground and the cold was getting into your bones, it tasted like home. Saturated fat scares in the early 1980s finished it. Wives started using margarine instead. And something was lost in that switch that nobody ever properly talked about. But dripping bread was just the foundation. What they put alongside it is where the real story starts. Number 19. Cold-boiled bacon. The bacon a miner's wife bought was not the bacon you'd recognise today. It was a piece of collar or hock, cheap, fatty, sometimes a bit salty from the brine, boiled in a pan until it was cooked through and left to go cold overnight. In the Durham coalfields in the 1960s, a piece of collar bacon cost around 1 6 a pound. One piece would give 4 to 5 thick slices. Those slices went into the tin without butter, without mustard, without anything, just the meat. Because down the pit in the dark, with dust in your throat and noise all around you, flavour wasn't the point. Substance was the point. Something that filled your stomach and kept your arms strong for the next 4 hours. Cold boiled bacon did that, reliably. Every single day for decades across every coalfield in Britain, and yet you will not find it in a single food history book. It existed only in those snap tins and in the knowledge of the women who made it. It vanished slowly in the 1970s, when processed sandwich meats arrived in the corner shops and seemed easier. They weren't better. They were just easier, and easier won. If that was just the tin, wait until you hear what happened at the pit top before the men even went down. Number 18, pit top tea, before the cage dropped, before the shift started, before the darkness closed in. There was tea. The pit top canteen was often nothing more than a corrugated iron hut with a boiler and 3 women who had been there since 6. The tea came in enamel mugs, so thick the heat barely came through them. It was stewed. It had been on the boil since 5. By 7 in the morning, it was the colour of mahogany and strong enough to strip paint. 2 sugars, always, because sugar was energy, and energy was what the next 8 hours required. Some men had 3. Nobody commented. In the Durham and Yorkshire pits in the 1960s, the tea was free, included in the colliery's welfare provision under the National Coal Board. A small thing, but for a man about to descend, it was more than tea. It was the last warmth he'd feel for 8 hours. The pit-top canteens closed as collieries closed. By 1994, there was almost nothing left. The huts, the boilers, the women who knew every man's order, all gone, along with the pits themselves. But what happened underground? That's interesting. Number 17. And this is the one that stops people. In a low seam, and many were between 18 and 30 inches high, a miner couldn't sit up to eat. He lay on his side or crouched on his knees in a space barely big enough to breathe in complete darkness, because the lamp was saved for working, and he ate his snap by feel, by hand, in the dark. No table, no light, no plate, just the tin, his fingers, and 20 minutes. In the Nottinghamshire pits in 1968, Some ate where the roof was so close they could feel it against their helmets when they lifted their heads. The temperature at the coalface could reach 90 degrees. The humidity was extreme, and the dust was always there, in your mouth, on your hands. Food you could eat in the dark without a mess. 4p. That's what it cost his wife to fill that tin for a full shift in 1971. Everything was engineered. For conditions no food writer has ever described. We are still in the top half. The food gets more remarkable the further down we go. Number 16. Doorstep cheese sandwiches, strong cheddar, or whatever was cheapest at the co-op that week. In Yorkshire, it was often a crumbly Cheshire. In Wales, it was sometimes a sharp territorial cheddar so strong it made your eyes water. In the Scottish coalfields, a hard crowdie if the family had connections. Cut thick, not sliced from a packet, cut from a block with a proper knife, wedges rather than slices, pressed between doorstep cuts of white bread, with a scraping of made mustard and butter if the budget stretched, wrapped in greaseproof paper. Put in the tin, a 2-inch wedge of strong cheese. Between 2 thick slices of bread would provide 800 calories. For a man burning 5,000 calories, that's nearly 20% of his daily energy. Nobody counted any of that. His wife just knew he came home less tired on the days when there was cheese, so she made sure there was cheese. Number 15. Brawn. Brawn is the one that makes people hesitate today, and that hesitation tells you exactly how far we've come. Head cheese. Pre-sliced processed cheese in the mid-1970s started replacing the block. Easier, lasted longer, tasted of almost nothing by comparison. And the tin got worse. Made from the head of a pig, or sometimes the trotters and ears, simmered for hours with herbs and bay and a splash of vinegar until the meat fell off the bone. Packed into a basin, covered with stock, and left to set overnight in the cold. Sliced like a terrine, it came out pale and speckled, trembling slightly. In the mining communities of South Wales in the 1960s, brawn was made at home by women who had learned from their mothers. A pig's head cost 2 shillings. It would produce enough brawn to fill the snap tin 4 days running. Substantial high-calorie food from 2 shillings. Cheap pork cuts became less available. Supermarkets standardized their meat ranges in the late 1970s. The knowledge stopped being passed down, and when the women stopped making it, it disappeared. Number 14. Onion and dripping sandwiches. Raw onion, sliced thin, almost translucent, with a sharp knife on a wooden board. Salt pressed into the onion, folded, wrapped. Tin. This sounds rough, and by any modern standard it was. But raw onion in a confined space underground was completely normal. Everyone ate it. Everyone smelled of it. There was no social cost because the social world down there operated by different rules. A large onion in 1966 cost a penny. Combined with dripping already in the house, it cost almost literally nothing, and it kept a man going through the hardest part of the shift, the dead hours, when the body wants to slow down and the coal face requires the opposite. Raw onion sandwiches underground. Number 13. Cold rice pudding, baked in the oven the night before. Full cream milk, rice, sugar, nutmeg. Low heat for 2 hours until the skin was thick and golden and slightly wrinkled. Left to go completely cold overnight. Then a wedge cut and wrapped in greaseproof and put in the snap tin. Not as dessert, as fuel. Dense, calorie-rich, stable. In the pit villages of County Durham in the 1960s, rice pudding was a staple. A £2 bag of rice from the co-op cost 8p in 1967. Full cream milk added fat. It was a serious source of energy rather than just a sweet treat. We are halfway through, and we haven't reached the items that the miners specifically requested, the ones they would mention at the end of the shift. Number 12. Staffordshire oatcakes, not the Scottish kind. The Staffordshire oatcake, large, thin, spongy. In the North Staffordshire coalfields, Chesterton, Silverdale, Kidsgrove, the oatcake was not optional. It was the bread. The local oatcake shops opened at 6 in the morning, and the miners' wives were there in the first 10 minutes buying them fresh. Number 10. Condensed milk sandwiches. This one raises eyebrows, and it should, because it tells you something important about the extremity of the calorie demands these men were under. Condensed milk, Nestlé, the yellow tin with the red label, spread directly onto white bread from a spoon. Thick, sweet, intensely calorie-dense, folded and put in the tin. A tin of condensed milk in 1970 cost around 9p. Spread across 4 slices of bread, it provided an enormous calorie hit in a very small, lightweight, stable package. In the Scottish coalfields, Lanarkshire, Ayrshire, Fife, condensed milk sandwiches were eaten specifically as the second item in the snap tin after the savoury food. Not as dessert exactly. As a deliberate energy top-up for the second half of the shift, when the body was running low and the hardest physical work often still lay ahead. The men didn't know about blood sugar or glycogen. They knew that without something sweet at the halfway point of the shift, the last 2 hours were considerably harder. So the condensed milk went in the tin, and we are now in the top 10. The items from here to number 1 are the ones the miners talked about. The ones that, if they were missing from the tin, got mentioned at the end of the shift. Number 9. Mutton stew in a flask. Not a food flask. Not a purpose-built soup thermos. An ordinary glass-lined vacuum flask, the kind that cost around 4 shillings from Woolworths. Filled with stew made the previous evening and left overnight to develop. Mutton stew. Because mutton was considerably cheaper than lamb in the 1960s. A pound of mutton neck cost around 1 and 3 in 1966, roughly half the price of equivalent lamb. Browned in dripping with onion and carrot and turnip. 20 minutes into the break, the flask opened and the stew was still warm. Not hot, warm, but in a space where the temperature could be freezing. Warm was extraordinary. Warm was the thing above all other things. A national coal board survey conducted in 1969 found that miners who consumed a warm food item reported significantly higher output. The survey was filed. Nobody acted on it. The women had already known this for a generation. Number 8. Homemade snap cake. Every pit village in Britain had its version. In Yorkshire, it was parkin, dense, dark, treacle-heavy. In South Wales, it was bara brith, a tea loaf made with dried fruit. In Durham, it was a plain currant cake, flour, lard, currants, a little sugar, made in a loaf tin without ceremony. These cakes had specific properties that made them ideal for the snap tin. They didn't crumble under pressure. They didn't dry out quickly. Parkin in 1968 cost around 4p per generous slab. That slab contained enough slow-release energy to sustain a man through the last 90 minutes. The homemade snap cake died when the time to make it disappeared. Packaged biscuits arrived in the tin instead. Garibaldis, bourbons, digestives. Not the same, not even close. Number 7. Hard-boiled eggs. 2, always 2. Boiled until completely hard. Not the fashionable, slightly soft centre of today, but completely hard all the way through. Because a soft-centred egg would not survive 8 hours in a metal tin in a warm, dusty environment safely. In a mining community where a sick man meant a family without income, food safety was not optional. Wrapped individually in grease-proof paper, eaten in the dark by feel, the shell peeled in pieces and dropped on the floor of the seam because what else were you going to do with it? Hard-boiled eggs appeared in the snap tins of British miners from at least the late 19th century. They cost around a penny each in the mid-1960s. The egg is, in this context, close to a perfect food. Number 6. Dripping toast, made the previous morning. Not bread spread with cold dripping. Toast, made on the range or under the grill first thing in the morning. Spread with dripping while still hot, so the fat soaked into the bread and set as it cooled. Then wrapped and put in the tin. By the time it was eaten, it was cold, slightly compressed. This is a level of food engineering, again without anyone using that word, that speaks to decades of trial and error in those back kitchens. She tried it with untoasted bread. It came back half-eaten. She toasted it the next day. It came back empty. Number 5. Pit hogget, slow roasted mutton. Not an everyday snap item. This was the Friday treat, the end of week reward. The thing that got mentioned during the week as something to look forward to. Hogget is sheep between 1 and 2 years old. A shoulder of hogget in 1967 cost around 2 shillings and 6p, rubbed with dripping and salt and put in the range oven on a very low heat. In the snap tin on a Friday, Cold hogget on white bread with a scrape of mustard was not just food. It was the acknowledgement that the week was nearly done. Tomorrow was Saturday, and he wouldn't have to go back down. Number 4. A bottle of cold sweet tea. Not in a flask. In a bottle. A recycled lemonade bottle or a glass milk bottle, filled with strong tea, already sweetened with 3 or 4 spoons of sugar. In the heat of the coalface, fluid loss was serious. A man working at the face could lose 3 to 4 pints of sweat in a shift. The sugar in the tea provided fast energy. They just knew the men who brought sweet tea came up in better shape. The bottle was specific because a flask was an extra expense many families couldn't justify. The bottle was free. It came in with the milk or the lemonade and went back out with the minor, reused every day until it broke. Number 3. Chip cakes. Chips in a bread roll from the pit top canteen. On the days when the flask was empty and the tin was sparse, on the days when money had run short, there was the pit top canteen chip cake. A soft white bap, sometimes called a cob, split open and filled with freshly fried chips. 3p. The canteen sold out every morning because there was always a queue of men whose pride meant they'd never say their tins were light. Number 2. The snap tin itself. And what it meant. Every miner had one. Metal, rectangular, about the size of a small hardback book, dented from years of being sat on or dropped in the dark. The tin went with him every day for 40 years. The snap tin was not just a container. It was a daily physical letter from his wife to him, sent down into the dark every morning, telling him in the language of food that she knew what he needed. Laid in the tin in the order he'd eat it. Number 1. Bread and jam. You expected something dramatic. And instead, bread and jam. White bread. Strawberry jam spread thick enough to mean something. At the very bottom of the tin. Always the last thing. It was the thing they mentioned most when interviewed. The bread and jam at the bottom of the tin, eaten in the dark, 2,000 feet underground. It was the promise that the shift was almost over. The daylight would come. It was the taste of nearly home. If your grandfather or your father ever carried a snap tin, or if you carried one yourself, leave it in the comments. Because those tins deserve to be remembered, and the women who packed them deserve to be named.